Millions of migrant workers have fled from India's cities since the coronavirus lockdown back in March. After all public transportation lockdown was stopped, people had to walk long distances to their home villages. Many feared being left without food and clean water if they stayed and being kept from their families. So how are these workers faring since they've headed home? DW's India correspondent Nimisha Jaiswal traveled to Rajasthan to find out.
For nearly 2 weeks, Sunita Jatav has been working on this water reservoir. It is 7 hours of hard labor every day in Rajasthan's punishing sun, especially for someone who is doing it for the first time. Sunita was one of more than 30,000 migrants who fled home to Rajasthan's Karoli district when India locked down in late March. Her husband had been making good money, working 2 jobs in Jaipur. She focused on raising their 5 children. They didn't need a second income. Then the shutdown hit. Her husband lost his work.
The virus can come here too. We aren't afraid of that. We just came here because there was no work there. Until now we were making do with our savings, but now there's nothing left, so my husband has gone back.
Her husband is now back in Jaipur, but with just 1 job at half the money. With much less income, she now needs to work too. Sunita and the others will earn a meager 150 rupees a day, 23 euros for 2 weeks of work. Yet, she is lucky. Only 3 of the workers here are returned migrants. Job sites like this one are currently the main way for the government to offer paid work to locals. However, one must have a government-issued job card to be employed here. Locals tell us that the process to get a new job card can take months. The region's arid landscape leaves little scope for agriculture, and other work is hard to find as well, pushing over 70,000 residents to migrate. Most of these workers have simply not bothered to get a government job card. After all, they can make 5 to 10 times more a day in the city. But now, the government's Cash for Work scheme, sporadically deployed through short-term labor-intensive projects, is all they have. And even these jobs are scarce. Kamal Singh was desperate to get home. He spent a week's pay to convince 2 truck drivers to allow him to cram into their vehicles with 70 other men, without food and water, to get to Karoli. For the last decade, both Kamal and his brother have worked as stonemasons in the southern city of Hyderabad to support their family of 9. His brother returned there this week to look for work and to pay off their overdue rent. Kamal has been borrowing money at high interest rates to make ends meet.
Everything has been shut. What are we supposed to do? There's never any work here anyway. The one government work project I heard of paid only a pittance for 13 days of work. What use is that?
Kamal says his brother has warned him against going back. Cases are on the rise, and another lockdown could be looming. But migrants like him know that for the second time, they have to make a choice between facing the virus and starvation. It is time to pack their bags again.
A very difficult choice. Joining us now from Delhi is DW correspondent Nimisha Jaiswal, who filed that report for us. Good day to you, Nimisha. Faced with the poverty at home, like we just saw in your report, are migrant workers starting to return to the cities?
Well, Brian, some definitely are. In one of the villages we went to, they told us that 100 migrants had returned at the beginning of the lockdown and over 50 had already headed back. This in the circumstance where major urban centers like Delhi and Bombay are massive hotspots, and India is nearing 1 million cases. But the migrants in these villages told us that they really have no option. They rushed back home when the lockdown hit because they were afraid to be away from their families and without work. But once again, in these villages for the last 3 months, they have almost had no income at all. So they have no option but to return to the cities.
When the pandemic hit, it was pointed out that migrant workers in India are the backbone of the urban economy. What kind of impact is their absence having on the big cities?
Well, definitely, Brian, that is true because at the beginning of this lockdown, when there were only about a few hundred cases and the whole country was locked down for 2 months in one of the strictest lockdowns in the world. Now, since the beginning of June, India has gone into what it's calling its unlock phases and reopening restaurants, shops, factories. And all of these are facing the brunt of the absence of many of these migrants because, like I said, while some have returned, many are actually continuing to choose to stay back. Analysts believe that this is really bringing to the fore something that is hung in the back of urban consciousness, which is how dependent our cities are on these rural migrants. The government has announced significant schemes, the latest one amounting to 6 billion euros, close to 6 billion euros, to help migrants find work in their villages or near their villages. But many business owners and factory owners are appealing to the government for help actually to get these migrants back into the cities because their businesses cannot run without these migrants.
Nimisha, this pandemic focusing our attention on so much that we've taken for granted. Nimisha Jaiswal for us in Delhi. Thanks so very much.